Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The time is now 8 o'clock and I call to order the Tuesday, May 27, 2025, DuPage County Finance Committee. Should I get the roll call first before I do this? Okay. A quorum of the members is physically present. I will entertain a motion to permit those members not physically present due to personal illness or disability, employment purposes, or the business of the board, family or other emergency or unexpected child care obligations to participate by video or teleconference. I have a motion by member Childress, second by member Heather. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, members A.
Thank you.
How can I get a roll call, please?
Member Cahill, Member Childress, Member Covert.
Here.
Member Desart, Member Eckhoff, Member Evans, Member Galassi, Member Garcia,
Here.
Member Heather, Member Honig,
Here.
Member Krajewski, Member LaPlante, Member Ozag, Member Rutledge, Member Schwarzy, Member Tornatori, Member Yu,
Here.
and Member Zay.
Here.
Okay, I really have no remarks today. We're gonna go directly into a presentation regarding our housing solutions. Looking for Paul Haas, so I see all the way over there. I don't know if he's supposed to be doing it. Have you come forward, Jeremy? You're gonna start? Okay, great. And our chairs of the Ad Hoc Housing Committee, Member Rutledge and Member Tornatori are gonna come up. And there was no public comment. I was pretty bad.
Good morning, everybody. It's like, bam, right into the meat of the meeting here. So, I'm awake now. Good morning, everyone. Today, we'll be reviewing staff recommendations on housing solutions and outlining the next steps in our county's ongoing effort to address the housing needs of our community. As someone who spent years renovating and reselling homes, I know that a home is more than just a house. It's a foundation for a sense of place and belonging. I'm confident that the recommendations being presented today will help ensure that both current and future residents of DuPage County can experience that same sense of belonging. We're working to make DuPage people all proud to call home, DuPage home. The work we've done together as a county on this issue is truly inspiring, and many of the policies we've implemented are now being held up as models by think tanks and experts across the country. And we've achieved this progress through collaboration and conviction. So thank you all for that. With that, I'd like to invite the chair of our Ad Hoc Housing and Development Committee, Sam Tornatori, to share a few words before we move into the presentation.
Thanks, Sheila. Everything you said. As a member of the board of the Illinois Housing and Development Authority for over 13 years, I've seen what affordable housing means to people, particularly those most vulnerable, our seniors, our veterans, people who need permanent supportive housing. And we've done the same thing here at the county, and we're moving forward with that. There is, however, in many cases, a gap for those people who don't fit in one of those categories. And we've begun to call that the missing middle. These are people who are born and raised in our county, work here, but maybe make too much money to get any government assistance, but not enough to live where they work or where they were raised. That's where we're moving forward toward that. The development committee over the past few months, a year or so more, have done what we can to make it more attractive for developers to build here. Reducing the requirements in some cases for parking and density to make it a little cheaper for people to build so that it can ultimately be cheaper for people to live. We're going to be seeing today, and you're going to have a presentation regarding, again, what that next step would be. And that's what we call a land bank or community housing trust. It's the ability of the county to be able to essentially buy property, development, help it with developers so that we can control what we're going to be seeing here for the people who live and work here in DuPage County. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the chair for her leadership and vision, certainly to Paul Haas and the development committee. We've worked very hard at that, and especially to Jeremy and Paul and Mary Keating, who worked so hard in making this happen. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, who's going to give you the heads up on it all.
Good morning, everybody. All right, I had coffee this morning, so I'm ready to go. All right, so next slide. All right, so quick agenda today. We're gonna recap all the ad hoc housing accomplishments we've had, go over some legal definitions, so we're talking about the same things. There's a lot of words in affordable housing that are used interchangeably, but for this specific conversation, we're gonna wanna keep it nice and tight. We're gonna present the staff recommendation on our next steps, go through those next steps, and then have some discussion. Next slide, please. So a lot has been done on affordable housing in DuPage County over the last 2 years. January, you established the committee for ad hoc housing solutions. And then in February, you allocated $2.5 million in surplus revenue to address this issue. And in August of 2023, the Housing Solutions Funds was established. And then we reached out to Grounded Solutions, and then they started looking at what that missing middle that Sam referred to was and how that actually works in DuPage County and the unique pieces of that. In February 2024, the underproduction study was released, and then another $2.5 million was allocated to it. During this time, after you got the underproduction study, Grounded Solutions started doing, well, okay, now we know what the underproduction is. What are we going to do to address this? And one of the pieces they came up with is what we're going to talk about today. But during that time, even though we were still in the study mode, Paul and Mary's teams continued to move forward with what we had available to us to address the needs of housing. So the big thing is the zoning changes and the ADU change that happened last June. Around that time, we received the housing action plan and was able to take a look at that and decide what we need to do. I believe one of their issues, if it was not already in there, was that principal arterial conversion change that allows on the principal arterials the rezoning for them to be multifamily on those main arterials. And in March, we presented you with the Housing Solutions Report and what we've been doing. And during this whole time, Mary Keating's team has been doing wonderful work with actually addressing housing needs with the current policy regime we have. Next slide. So there's three words we need to, or three terms we need to have an idea of as we're having this discussion today. It is Housing Trust Fund, Community Land Trust, and Land Bank. As it exists, Housing Trust Fund under subsection D of section 25 of the state law, we already have that with the Housing Solutions fund that is established. We're using that authority to sequester that money specifically for this issue. So we have, these are the funds that make all of this possible. A community land trust is the private nonprofit corporation that allows you to do the things that you as a community want to do to address affordable housing, whether that is developing property, credit counseling, down payment assistance. It gives you the ability to address the gaps in service. And then a land bank, we already kind of de facto have that through our clean and lean program because we know what we want to use this land for, but we have not laid out the resolution yet exactly those purposes and made that affirmative statement. So those are the three pieces of or three legs of the stool of affordable housing. So next slide. So the staff recommendation, when we met in March, one of the housing solution or one of the solutions Grounded Solutions gave us was establishing a county land bank with a community land trust to address the housing needs. Staff, after looking at the different ways that this could be done, but practically done, this was the way that we came to a conclusion of establishing it because this is the most ubiquitous way that this is done. The county runs the land bank, and we partner with a nonprofit to do the community land trust. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But the main thing is that maintaining the land bank internally gives us the internal controls to address our own unique needs in our community, while partnering with the community land trust gives us the expertise on the development portion and the programming that these folks have already started working through, working with other communities. This will expand our authority to address other parts of housing that we cannot expressly do as a county, but the nonprofit will be able to do. It also alleviates the staff burden of establishing a whole new nonprofit and putting that through. And this is the proven model. This is the model that is the most ubiquitous across the land bank housing trust and throughout our state. And this is where I will hand it off to Paul to walk through our next steps. So you can go to the next slide.
So one of the things that we'll be asking the county board to do today is to pass a resolution that will allow us to establish a land bank. And as Jeremy said, we de facto have a land bank. We have inventoried land that we've received through our Clean and Lean program, either through foreclosures or through gifts from property owners who simply don't want to take care of their property more. They give it over to us. In addition, in theory, the county has a lot of land that we own through various means in stormwater, public works, transportation, where we have engaged in condemnations because we've been improving land with public facilities, but then we have excess land that we didn't need. Not suggesting that all of that land will be available to us, but we've inventoried that. And eventually, if we do pass the resolution to have the land bank, we will then we'll review that land, and then we'll put that land into the land bank as opposed to having it just in inventory right now. The second thing that we're looking for you to do later today in county board is part of this resolution is to allow us to go out on what I always hear Nick say, the street, which is to do a request for quotes to find some non-for-profit organizations that are in the lane of housing, affordable housing. There's a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, there's several non-for-profit agencies that are in the Chicagoland area that we have already spoken with. In fact, we're part of one of our early Housing Solutions Committee presentations, and we will be looking to get quotes from various organizations and select one to partner with to help us with our land trust. And as Jeremy said, the idea there is rather than to recreate the wheel internally, which would involve potentially requiring more staffing, a separate organization altogether within the county, we think it's best to partner with a non-for-profit. We would have a stake with the non-for-profit, and we would be able to have some controls internally. But as Jeremy suggested, all of the management activities, all of the activities that they're currently engaged in the Chicagoland area, they would help us in DuPage County. So that's one of the things we're looking for the county board to do today with the resolution. One of the things, just sort of parenthetically, that you'll see today on county board is a combination of two of these things coming together today. We have some land that we acquired through the state's attorney through some great work by Connor McCarthy that an organization donated to us. We originally were going to put that land into the land bank, which effectively we have in the inventory. But through review, we've determined that it makes more sense to sell that land at market and take the money and eventually, once we have the land trust, if it's approved by the county, to put that money in the land trust. So that's an example of what we can do right now and what we can do in the future with any land that we have in a land bank. We can convert that to cash, put that in a land trust, and we think we can do a lot more good with that money in terms of low interest loans, construction loans, things like that. So you'll be seeing that later today at county board as well. Once again, looking for a resolution to move forward with the land bank and go out on the street to try and find a nonprofit to partner with. Do we have another slide? That's it. That's it. So that'll turn it back over to Jeremy.
Okay, so open discussion. I'm sure there's questions.
Thanks. I had saw member Desart's hand first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you guys for that presentation. Really appreciate it. Quick question for Jeremy. So you brought up the nonprofit, but I didn't really understand how that works. The county board is going to establish a nonprofit? No. Tell me
No.
more about the nonprofit.
So we would, as Paul alluded to, go out on the street, get an RFQ, request for qualifications on this nonprofit for folks that work in this industry and do this type of work. They'll come to us and say, hey, we'll say, hey, we want to work with you. Give us how this works, what this will cost.
So we want to work with a nonprofit.
Yes, as
And,
opposed to.
and, and then for Paul, quotes from various organizations like who? Would it be like Habitat for Humanity or what kinds of organizations are we looking
Yeah,
at?
any non-for-profit that works in this lane, Habitat for Humanity, Housing Authority, and DuPage County. There are several agencies in the Chicagoland area that we've brought to the county to talk with us. There's Cook County Land Bank. There's an
Okay.
organization called SEPA, which is out of Libertyville, that do this kind of work. The key here is that they're non-for-profit. So as a non-for-profit, it gives us a lot more flexibility and we're a lot more nimble to be able to do things that we otherwise couldn't do if we weren't a non-for-profit.
Perfect. So that explains it a lot better. So we're looking for partnering with nonprofits.
Absolutely, yes.
Just tell you on Saturday, got a call from Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, and she called to tell us that the DHA has been awarded $2.2 million community grant funding for Habitat for Humanity for a woodland court project in West Chicago. So just got that call. So there are nonprofits out there. There are Congress people who are keyed into affordable housing issues, and there's money available. So maybe we can use some grant money from the state to buy property as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, next I have member Heather.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, everyone. Great presentation. One of my questions was asked by Member Desart, so I'll just jump to the second question. You mentioned about that this is a tried and tested model. Could you explain what are some of those counties that we are looking at to maybe learn from, get guidance from, or just use that as our model? Is this something that we're looking into or no?
Well, the tried and tested models are really with the not-for-profits. There are several in the Chicagoland area that have created land banks, that have created housing trust, and have already have programs in place where they are taking land that they received either from donations and then turning that land into a 99-year lease, donating that land and giving some money through the housing trust to build units and then manage the process. That process is similar to what Mary Keating's group does with CDBG.
Yeah.
A lot of that work we see in the 80% or lower income. But it's sort of the tried and tested model that we see in CDBG. But we're looking to do it at a different level between 80% and perhaps 150% of AMI in the county. But the tried and tested model portion is really what we have already seen done so well with CDBG. We're just looking to take it to a different level in DuPage County.
Got it. So, and this is great because if that model has not been tried elsewhere where the nonprofits are not working with other counties, and we are one of the very few counties, or perhaps the first county in the state of Illinois to do that and do something different, as you mentioned, I think that's fantastic. And I appreciate the leadership and the thought on that. So thank you.
Thank you, member Heather. I've got member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple quick questions. You mentioned that the state's attorney obtained some land and through investigation decided to sell it and use that money to put into our housing trust fund, or?
So what happened is that as part of our Clean and Lean program, neighborhood revitalization, we had a piece of property that we had essentially in court. And that property owner, along with the trustees of the property, several members of the trust were deceased, and we got a hold of the trustees, and the trustees said, how about we just donate the land to the county? And so in the process of donating land to the county, we worked with the state's attorney's office, Connor McCarthy, to get all of the necessary documents to be able to get that land deeded over to us. Now that we have that land, there's a house on it. We're going to demolish the house and have a vacant piece of property eventually. We've looked at the neighborhood. We've looked at the ability potentially to do some additional housing on that property. And we've determined that it's probably makes more sense to sell that land at the market and take the money, put that into a trust, and we can do more with that into the housing trust. We can do with that more money rather than rebuild a single family home there. But having said that, that's not a program yet because we don't have a land bank and we don't have a housing trust set up. But since we have the land, we're going to tear it down, and there's an interest to buy the land. We're going to do that now, and then when we hopefully get the bank and the housing trust, we can put that money into the housing trust.
Okay.
And incidentally, the $5 million that we already have that the county board has given us, that ultimately would be the first pot of money that goes into this housing trust.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Member Owens?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This sounds really great. I'm glad we're getting experts on board instead of trying to do it ourselves. My question, I guess, is we always maintain control over the land trust, correct?
So the land bank, we would maintain control over. The land we would maintain control over, but we would partner with a non-for-profit to assist us in finding people to help us develop that land, and also finding developers and people to be able to loan or give the money to in the housing trust. But the expertise and all the management aspects of that would come through the not-for-profit. But
So-
we would always have a stake in the land and in the housing trust.
Okay, yeah, so the housing trust, is it still an asset of the county, or are we kind
No.
of letting them?
The bank and the housing trust would always be an asset of the county. We
Okay.
would partner with them to help us
Correct.
navigate the things we need to do to be able to find developers and people who can help us develop the land or source that money out to.
So they're almost like a consultant to us, but we have.
That's a fair statement. Yeah, we would look on any non-for-profit to sit on their organization as well, sit on their boards as well.
Right.
We would look to be as they're providing services to us, we'd be looking to sit on their board as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, next I have Member Yu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I wanted to know, do we know or can we anticipate the administrative expenses, the cost of contracting out with a nonprofit organization
We don't know. That's one of the things that we'd be looking for in the
with the RFQ?
request for qualifications, correct?
Right. And can you just remind me, there was the organization that did come at the very beginning who presented, and they're from like the Evanston Skokie area, and they've been doing this work for a very, very long time.
Correct. We had several. We had the Chicago Land Bank.
Yes.
We had SEPA, which is an organization out of Libertyville, which handles essentially Libertyville, Deerfield, Highland Park, those areas. We had Bloomington, who has a brand new land bank that they, at the time they were in before us, they were working on it. So we thought they were important to show what it takes to get that kind of organization in place. And as an example, it took them 2.5 to 3 years to get up and running, to get their non-for-profit going. And so the idea there was to show how difficult it is to
Yeah.
get, and how perhaps it makes more sense for us to partner with an existing not-for-profit.
Okay. And then one more question, if I may. It has to do with, oh my gosh, I just blanked out for a second. I'm sorry, you'll have to come back to me. Thank you.
Okay, Member Ozog?
Thank you for the presentation. I know we've sold property, the county has sold property in the past. I'm interested in how we go about that. I assume that there's advertisements, there's fair access to, that we're going to sell it, et cetera. Would we still continue to sell property, or would the not-for-profit that you'd like to engage be in charge of that?
The county would be.
The county would be.
Right.
And again, you would do either auction or some sort of public notices given, et cetera. That kind
There
of
are several
procedure.
mechanisms. For instance, what we've done in building and zoning in the past is, once we had a piece of property, tore it down and didn't want to bank it at the time because we weren't there yet, we just put a sign up on the property and said, this property is up for auction, make a bid.
Okay.
That's the way we've done it in building and zoning. That's the way we propose
Yeah.
to do it with the property in Medina. There are other mechanisms, however, how we could do that if we wanted to sell the property. Now, keep in mind, the idea is not necessarily to sell some of these properties that would be in our land bank. It would be to use them as incentives for developers to help us with affordable housing. But when we do find a piece of property that where it makes more sense, that we own, makes more sense for us to put it on the market, one of the ways we could do it is by auction.
Okay, thank you.
Member Honak?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jeremy and Paul, for the presentation. That's really helpful. I just have one question. Have we worked with in the past of any of the nonprofits that would be suited for the land bank projects that you mentioned that would, particularly have more expertise? Like, have we done other things with them that that they also are experts in this matter as well that we know?
Well, specifically DuPage Habitat for Humanity. Yes, we've done several large developments with them, one in West Chicago, one in Glen Ellen, and a number of scattered site projects. So yes, we've worked closely with them for a long time. I did want to mention something, another role of the nonprofit that we haven't talked about is the, depending on the model that we decide, and it can vary by parcel. How do, is this going to be rental? Is this a home ownership opportunity? Is this a shared equity model? If we're talking about models of to ensure long-term affordability, meaning it's a rental property that will be affordable for 80 years or whatever, whatever timeframe we want to put on it, somebody has to make sure that those tenants are income eligible. That's an enormous amount of work. That's something that the nonprofit would do, and then we would be in the role of sort of monitoring that and just making sure it was in compliance. But the same goes for home ownership opportunities. If it's making sure that the homeowner, the home buyer, is income eligible, going through all of the steps of housing counseling, all of that kind of work. So it's not just the development side, it's that long-term compliance that we would be partnering with a nonprofit to perform.
Member Krajewski?
Thank you. I know you guys are talking about having a not-for-profit brought in, and then they may help be able to work with the developers. Are we looking at all potentially, instead of sending it out just for not-for-profits like that, but just going to the national profits, say nationally, the top 50 homeowners of low-income housing or the housing development, probably 15 to 20 of them are not-for-profits. And they do everything from managing to building to obtaining the finance. I think like the largest probably Mercy Homes. That they have, and these ones have between 10 and 50 million affordable housing units. They have all the expertise. Probably 15 of the top 50 are not for profits, but they can also do the development too.
So, yeah, I think you're explaining step 2 and before step 1. So there would still be the community land trust nonprofit managing that, which they would oversee.
But that's exactly what the nonprofit, some of the nonprofits that.
But those are specific.
But they also have the development arms too. Where
Yes.
They have their area that can manage and do that, but they also can develop versus having to go out for a developer, and they got access to financing with all the private equities.
So they could put in for the RFQ if they wanted to be the managing partner, but a lot of those nonprofits just do the development of the property and then maintain the property. Whereas this overarching nonprofit that would work with us would be more of a clearinghouse for all of those different developers that exist.
Right.
So
unless you had a not-for-profit, then they would just do it themselves and you wouldn't have to be worried about going to developer A, developer B, developer C. They would be the ones doing it.
Right. We've met with Mercy on that very issue. And a lot of the times when we meet with those individuals, they're looking for one-offs as opposed to a holistic program. Now, certainly Mercy is able to participate in the RFQ, but what you're talking about is more someone who is looking for one project as opposed to sort of a holistic approach. Getting land from the county and building, putting it in a housing trust where we hold the land and someone builds apartment units, lending money, being a bank, giving low interest loans, things like that. So while they're certainly qualified, it's usually just a one-off as opposed to a holistic program.
Yeah, but my guess is that this is a unique thing.
Understood.
Starting here in DuPage County, working with somebody like Mercy, they would then, if they, looks good, then it would roll out nationally how they would do that.
Understood,
If
yeah.
If DuPage works like that would be something they could roll out nationally because they have the infrastructure in
Yep,
place.
understood.
All right, thank you.
Okay, member you?
Oh, thank you. I remembered my question. So it actually had to do with the housing ordinance. So a lot of municipalities do have affordable housing ordinances, and I know that we can't necessarily do that at the county level, but I'm just wondering, how will we continue to replenish funds or continue to put in funds into this housing trust fund? Will we have a certain mechanism or policy going forward?
The simple answer to that is that we've been blessed to have $5 million put in by the county board so far. We would hope that there would be opportunities from the private sector to donate land. We've seen money donated for other large scale projects here in the county. There's an opportunity to do fundraising. There's an opportunity to get money from national sources. We're going out to Washington today to participate in Grounded Solutions National Conference. At that conference, there'll be many funders. I know it sounds kind of strange, but there's the Gates Fund, there's the Bezos Fund. They've been giving over $100 million over the last year to various sources. So we would be looking for any type of sources to get money. In addition, we would continue to fund this with the sale of properties like we're talking about today. And then hopefully, if it's available, if there's money available at the county, like we've seen in the past, perhaps the county would add additional funds to the program. And loans as well, yeah. Loans is part of the program, but in terms of getting money in and replenishing, yeah, there's certain things that we can do. But this is a good starting point. But that would be the idea is to look for any sources of funding that are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Member Ozog?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is more of a in the future question, but are we able to set our own requirements for serving this missing middle that you started talking about in the very beginning? Because are we tied, if we're not using federal funds, Paul alluded to charitable organizations, et cetera, are we not tied to any kind of federal restrictions income wise? Not that we know what federal restrictions are these days, I digress. But are we able to set our own level, of 80,000 for a family of four, et cetera, that kind of, are we able to do that? Is that something within our own range to decide what this missing middle is?
So as of right now, the rules that govern this program are under the state's affordable housing law. We have reached out and we presented this back in March. We are looking to, right now it's 80% of AMI.
Okay.
AMI, area median income.
Okay.
We have reached out and are working through the legislative process to raise that to 150%. That's kind of the industry standard too, on the direction that affordable housing is going because of this missing middle. There's a lot of programs for lower income folks. Obviously, folks who are above the 150% can hopefully afford, but we're looking at that. But as of right now, the rules that govern this, it's the 80% of AMI within the state statute. And
Okay.
the rules around that govern this program are the state laws.
But you're working to legislatively change
Yes.
that to 150%. Okay, thank you.
Member Arkoff?
Earlier in your presentation, you said that we had done a couple of zoning changes. And I remember the one where we allowed homeowners to, lack of a better word, create or use a existing bedroom to bring in someone for housing, to get that person housing. But have we done anything else?
So we've got 3 and 1 in the hopper, 3 that the county board has already approved. The first one was to take a look at all of our existing single family lots in the unincorporated area and superimpose what the zoning regulations were on that, the bulk regulations. We found that we had over 1,000 properties that technically are not buildable by right. In order to build on those properties, someone has to come in and ask for zoning relief, that entitlement process. Historically, what we found in that entitlement process is that it's timely, it costs money, and municipalities who are adjacent to those properties sometimes weigh in and say, from a technical standpoint, those properties don't meet our requirements, we object. And sometimes that kicks into a supermajority vote, which makes it very difficult for those properties to be developed. We changed the law on those properties. We call them historic lots of record. And any lot that is 50 feet wide, and we have over 1,000 of those in the county that are right at 50 feet, those are now developable as of right. They can be built on. They don't have to go through zoning entitlement. So that freed up 1,000 properties. The next zoning case that we did is we took,
No, I don't understand. Why weren't they developable before?
because they weren't large enough. They didn't meet a
Oh, so
technical
you
zoning
reduced
requirement.
the width of it
Right,
from what?
right.
To, what was it? To 50?
Before it was 66 feet wide
66.
and above, and anything below 66 feet, not buildable. So we've had, over the years, we've had people come and ask for zoning relief. Some have gotten zoning relief, some have not. But instead of having people go through that process, some are scared off of that process. They're just now legally allowed to be built on by right. There are some impediments. Sometimes there aren't roads there. Sometimes there's some special management there. But we can work through those things. At least we don't have to work through the zoning entitlement process anymore. They can come in and work through some of the brick and mortar issues, like putting a road in or dealing with some of the stormwater issues. But those lots are now developable. We've had several property owners come in and apply for building permits for those lots, where before they'd have to go for zoning. The second change that we made is on principal arterial roadways. Any roadway that is carries 25,000 movements a day. Those are your state roads, your county roads, 59, 75th Street, County Farm Road, North Avenue, so on and so forth. Those are called principal arterial roadways. And any single family lot that fronts on that municipal arterial roadway is usually there as a leftover piece of property. Most of the municipalities have annexed property, redeveloped those properties into commercial or industrial uses, but they had no need for some of those residential lots. And so they were just left. So we've been babysitting those lots over the years. There's been code enforcement violations on those properties. People don't take care of them. 20 years ago, we changed the law to allow for principal arterial office uses, for people to convert those single family homes into office uses, real estate offices, lawyer's office, dental office. And it's worked very well because now we have ownership, pride of ownership. People are taking care of those properties. And usually the activity in those properties is very limited. It's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, there's no activity. So it's cleaned up property. We've done the exact same thing with the ability to convert those single family homes into 2 units by right. You don't need any zoning relief. In the past, you'd have to come in and ask to rezone the property from single family to multifamily. Now you can just come in and apply for a building permit to convert the house from 1 unit into 2 unit. What that we think is going to do is offer the opportunity for rentals, not necessarily for ownership, but for rentals. One of the people who live in that house has to live in there, but they can rent the other unit out to someone. So that will increase the opportunities for rentals. The third thing that we did is as a conditional use, allow for what are called ADUs, accessory dwelling units, on any single family property in the county, unincorporated area. And that allows someone to take their existing home and by conditional use, which means they have to vet it through the ZBA and come to the county board for approval, they can have a second dwelling unit in their home by conditional use. And they could potentially also have a second dwelling unit in an existing detached accessory building. So if you have existing detached building or garage on your property, you could come in and convert that accessory building into a dwelling unit. Now, the key there is that accessory dwelling unit had to be existing, had to be existing at the time we approved the zoning ordinance for this change. And the reason for that is that if it's an existing building, the people who are living next door are used to the fact that there's an existing building there. It's not a new building, detached building, it's existing. In many instances, those existing detached buildings are not being taken care of. This is an opportunity for someone to fix up that detached building, put a dwelling unit in there, another rental opportunity. Those are the 3 things that we've done already. And we've already seen some people taking advantage of that. In the next couple of months, we'll see several people coming in for conditional uses to be able to build in a detached building to have a second dwelling unit in their backyard. The last thing that we're working on that we've already brought to development committee and we're going to be vetting in June is a new zoning category for properties in the R3 and the R4 zoning districts. Those are our most dense zoning districts, where we have the smaller lots. And the idea there is that if we create this zoning district, there will be different bulk regulations, different density allowances, smaller lot sizes, smaller setbacks, to allow people to have multiple units on these single family properties. Now, the idea here is anybody could take advantage of this new zoning district. The idea here with establishing this new zoning district is when the county creates the land bank, it would be our intention for the county to rezone the county properties to these R3 and R4A zoning districts. And the rezoning process would still come before the county board. We'd still vet it before the zoning board of appeals, bring it to development and bring it to county board. But the idea is another tool that when we create our program, county properties, we would look to rezone these properties to make them attractive to developers to build affordable housing on them. Still have to be vetted by the county board. But on some of these properties that we were talking about, these we think are eligible to be able to be converted to multifamily units in the middle of single family residential neighborhoods. Now, the key here is that we wouldn't do this without any zoning relief. So the public, the municipalities would all get notice. They could come in and vet it before the county board, but we would superimpose this new zoning district on county-owned properties only. We wouldn't do it across the board on private properties. But that's a little bit of a trickier lift, and that'll be coming before the zoning board of appeals and to the county board sometime in June or July of this year.
I actually had two questions. That was just
let me
the
think
first
about it.
one.
No, go ahead.
So the first three have been passed, and the fourth one we're gonna do later. Right. My other question is, and this is sort of resulting out of some of the work I do as an attorney, where I see some people mismanage their finances, for lack of a better word. And I've gone to a fundraiser for, I think it's called Homes, which is on Roosevelt Road, where they have counseling classes for people. And, but I see a lot of people who probably have got the income to afford housing misspend their money. I mean, I had one guy, he hired two companies to tell him how to manage his funds. I said, here, let me do it for free. You're spending more than you make. And his solution was, instead of paying a delivery charge every night for his food to be delivered, he'd order 3 meals at once and only pay 1 delivery charge. So there's a lot, and I think if there's a lot of counseling programs. I did a couple closings last week where people have to commit to go to counseling classes in the event they fall in default of their loans. So what are we doing to promote better finances for the people who buy?
So the things that we're telling you here today are big picture items. One of the things that we will do if we have this resolution passed today is that we will then start to work with the new Ad Housing Solutions Committee to talk about policy and programs. And that will be one of the discussions we'll have at the Housing Solutions Committee. How do we want to use the banks, the housing trust funds? Do we just want to use it for development and loans, or do we want to branch off into other activities? But that will be up to the Housing Solutions Committee.
It seems like there's a lot of agencies out there that do that type of work now that we could personally.
Yeah, there are HUD certified home buyer counseling agencies, and Home DuPage that you referenced is the primary one that serves DuPage County. Currently, any home ownership opportunity that we provide with any of the HUD funds requires first-time home buyer counseling. And so that's already a component. So as we open up beyond what the federal government requires us, and that's a federal requirement, homebuyer counseling before you can participate in any of these programs. I'm certain that's a component we would absolutely want to keep if we're providing home ownership opportunities. I completely agree.
I'd also like to see how well some of those programs have done. I've taught a couple of classes at home over the years, and I've never known if I help the people or if they're back into default a year later.
I guess there's two different, there's foreclosure prevention, which is for folks who have already gotten in financial trouble, and there's first-time homebuyer counseling. I can tell you, I haven't heard the stats in a while, but their first-time homebuyer counseling has a extremely low default rate, significantly lower than sort of the open market. Foreclosure prevention, I could reach out to Home and see what their effective rate is. I don't know off the top of my head, but they're certainly tried and true programs. And like I said, I'm sure we would want to incorporate that.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Krajewski and Member Desart.
Yeah, just to pick up on member Ozog's question regarding the state requirement, 80%, whatever.
Yeah.
If we participate in either level of financing with our money or loans, et cetera, can we require in that transaction the deed restriction where we put on there 120%? We require them to do it. I see a nod in the back from Paul.
That is a fundamental element of the program. Yes.
So if we wanted to up it to the 120 or whatever that number is, and we're participating in the financing of it or loaning them or giving them money to make the level that they need to make the project work, then we can do it and get around the 80%.
No, so let me be clear. So Chair Conroy has been working really hard down in Springfield to raise that 80% up. Because we cannot exceed that 80% because that's a state law today. So
But if you have a private transaction that you're selling a property to somebody, they can put a deed restriction on it, can't they? That is not, I mean. it's-
no, you have to change the statute because that's the 80% is what's there. And so the chair has had very good conversations. Hopefully we are moving this forward.
So if a
very soon.
developer came to us and said he wanted to do this just on his own property and put that in there, the state would prohibit it?
So we're not home rule. And as a
Understand.
result, we're subject to the 80% rule, which is in the statute right now. Going down to state to get that changed from, well, it wouldn't be
But if we have-
80,
Let's
it'd be
just
from
say we
0
had
to
a
150.
private developer coming to he owns a piece of property and he's unincorporated, he comes here and wants to put that restriction on.
But
Wouldn't be part of our program.
if
Right.
a developer is asking for financing,
You're
we
right.
don't have the statutory authority to assist with the financing for a project that's over 80%.
But if he's asking for zoning relief,
Well, if he's at anything else, if he came in right now and wanted to do something, certainly the board could consider that. Absolutely. But in terms of,
the loaning. of-
giving land available, leasing the land or giving money, we could not do
What
that until we
about
change the
what
statute.
about zoning relief?
Zoning, you can consider that right now.
So if they,
Absolutely.
yeah, so if they come in and want zoning relief for a little higher density, we could require the 120.
We couldn't require if they offered as a condition of zoning relief. And
Right.
for instance, we had a couple of zoning cases where they were looking to do that
Right.
in return for zoning entitlement. That could be part of the land use entitlement, but it wouldn't be part of us giving anybody any land or giving any funds.
So we
That
could
would just
use
be a
it in-
zoning issue.
Yeah, we can use it in the zoning. Okay,
Sure, yeah,
thank you.
sorry.
Okay, member Start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My final question is, assuming that the board approves this agenda item, what are the next steps and kind of a timeline if you have it?
So the next steps would be, we would develop the RFQ that would go out. The nonprofits would start responding to the RFQ during the next couple of months. We would be looking at those proposals. Staff would vet those proposals. And sorry. Just getting nervous there. So, and we would go through that and eventually someone would, come forward as the winner of the RFQ. We'd present them and we'd start entering the partnership. During that time as well, we'll be developing through the ad hoc Housing Solutions Committee, the internal operating mechanisms on how this is going to operate. What are best practices, talking to Grounded Solutions, our partners there, on what have you seen works and all that. Once that's done, it'll come in front of you for board to say, hey, here's the nonprofit we're going to partner with, please approve this. Here are the board or the administrative rules around this and how we're going to operate. So you know how this program's going. And then I would say, not to put it so simply, but we're off to the races.
So is it standard to have an RFQ out for several months? You said several months, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry if I misspoke, but
I mean,
how long do you think?
it's gotta be finite, right? A finite period of time, but I mean.
Yeah, there'll be a time limit on the RFQ, but we have to develop the RFQ and we'll put that out on the streets and people will give them enough time to respond in time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure
Yes,
we're going on
moving the
it.
ball forward.
All right, thank you. Thank you all.
I do
Okay.
believe Sam wanted to say a few words.
Sure.
These are all great questions, and it's a reason why I have suggested to the chair that the Housing Solutions Committee be brought back as a committee of the whole and not just 6 people. Now, we didn't have great attendance when it was like that, so perhaps maybe we can do it in a time when everybody's going to be here, like between meetings or before a finance committee meeting or something. But to that, and to Lucy's question about the Housing Trust Fund and what kind of power they would have, think of that as a president of a corporation and us as the shareholders. If we don't like what they're doing, we could fire them. There's going to be a contract that they're going to have to govern. Well, it'll be governed. And ultimately, we need to have that control because we're legislators. We have people that we have to deal with in our community, in our districts. So while all of these may be great ideas, it might not dovetail in a particular area. And District 2, 3, 5, whatever may say, this doesn't work here. Let's figure out somewhere else. That's why we have to have that control. So ultimately, it's my understanding, we're always going to have that control at the end of the day so that we as county board members can make sure that it's what's in the best interest of the county and not a particular developer. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Member Tornatore, and thank you to all of the staff for working on this. I really appreciate that. Going back to Member Ozog's statement about the missing middle, there definitely is a missing middle in DuPage County. Just working with my children who have been trying to buy new homes and things like that, it's sad they cannot afford to live where they grew up. My mother's house she bought in 1960 for $25,000. I know that's scary now, but we bought in 2000 and it was probably just 4 times as high. But now, I mean, we have houses selling for $500,000 in our same, and we are in a moderately priced home area. And so for our children getting out of college and getting jobs, it has been very difficult and very sad. So I really appreciate Chair Conroy's taking this on as a main priority. I think this is a huge priority for DuPage County, as I'm thankful for all of you here on the county board for taking an interest in this and having great questions today. I know Paul Haas is going to Washington, D.C. to represent us, and so I appreciate that. And hopefully we'll be hearing back what you learned there and bringing it back and to perhaps a full count. I'll be there for sure at the ad hoc, and I would encourage all of you, if you're not on that, to attend. So thank you so much for everything. I appreciate it. Okay, moving on. May I get a motion to approve the minutes for 25-1301 Finance Committee for the regular meeting Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. The motion was from Member Heather, second by Member Krajewski. Any questions on this? All those in favor? Motion carries. May I get a motion on the budget transfer, the FIR 009225 budget transfer for 5/27/2025 various companies and accounting units. Got a motion by, who was the motion by? I'm sorry, Member Covert, second by Member Heather. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to procurement requisitions. May I have a motion for FIP 000425, recommendation for approval of funding for Constagny, Brooks, Smith, and Profit LLP to provide legal service regarding the cyber incident as special assistant state's attorneys for the state's attorney's office for the period of April 28, 2025 through April 28, 2026 for an amount not to exceed $100,000. Motion by Member Covert, second by Member Krajewski. Any discussion on this item? Member Yu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So could I just ask, this is for legal services regarding the cyber incident, but I also know that there was emergency funding of like 54,000 that we gave to Coalition. And I think that was also to reduce or to talk about legal liability. So I'm just wondering what kind of services are being provided in this contract as opposed to what we had already provided.
Okay, we've got Anthony McPherson coming up to answer your question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Member Yu. So Coalition and Incident Response is a separate organization from Constagny. Constagny essentially is the main point of coordination and legal representation for the cyber incident. Coalition Incident Response, thank you, is the body who's actually helping us investigate and recover. So two separate organizations. So this is a not to exceed dollar amount to help us pay for any of the services that we've incurred so far, specifically with Constangy.
And Costanji, like you were saying, you're not part of the investigation. What will they be doing as special assistant attorneys?
They are part of it. So they do the full coordination of it. So CIR, Coalition Incident Response, is the technical arm. They're the coordination and legal part of it. So they're working with not only, Costangy is working with not only CIR, but they're also working with Fortinet on the sheriff's side. They're pulling together the data. They're helping us with different documents. They're making sure that we review all of the documents that we prepare. We have the right language, things of that nature. They prepared the summary report that we're going to actually release soon. So
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this, Member Ozog?
So $100,000 for the legal services about the incident. I'm curious about the budget source for this. If the incident started in the sheriff's office, and if my understanding
I'm going to defer to Nick.
Migrated over to the clerk of the circuit court, should this not be coming out of the sheriff's office's budget?
This incident will be funded through tort liability within the county budget.
Okay, and the tort liability is for all countywide.
It's all, I mean, if you think about it, all of the departments we're talking about are all general fund departments. The tort liability covers the general fund.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? And then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Human Services, and Member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on item 25-1330, HSP 0040A24, amendment to resolution HSP 004024, issued to Healthy Air Heating and Air Inc. for weatherization services to provide mechanical and architectural weatherization, labor and materials to increase encumbrance in the amount of $50,000, resulting in an amended contract total not to exceed $916,434, an increase of 5.77%.
Got a motion by Member Schwarzy, second by Member Desart. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I move on HSP 2325, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Keurig Dr. Pepper, the American Bottling Company, for beverages and fountain drinks for the DuPage Care Center and cafes on county campus for the period July 30th, 2025 through July 29th, 2026 for a contract total not to exceed $30,600.
Got a motion by Member Schwarzy, second by Member Yu. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to judicial. Thank you, Member Schwarzy. Moving on to Judicial and Public Safety, and Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on JPS R-6-25, resolution approving funds to administer the Seniors Drive-Through Meal Pilot Program in the amount of $142,000.
Got a motion by Member Evans, second by Member Schwarzy. Any discussion on this? Member Yu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually move to amend this resolution to include the following recital. Whereas the DuPage County Sheriff's Office shall work with the Community Services Department on a means test for eligibility of recipients. Yep.
Okay, we've got a motion for an amendment to this item and a second by Member Desart. All in favor? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Going back to Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on JPS R-6-25 as amended.
Okay, we've got a motion by Member Evans for JPS R-6-25 as amended, and seconded by Member Schwarzy. Any other discussion on this as amended? Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. How does that means testing happen? Who does that vetting? How do people apply? I guess that's what I have questions about.
Thank you, Member Rutledge. We haven't worked out the details yet, but what I had suggested to Under Sheriff Moore is that individuals demonstrate that they're receiving LIHEAP or food stamps or Medicaid or there's some other verification that's already happening, not doing brand new certifications strictly for this program.
So if people who are not receiving those services present to this, then will there be somebody that can advise them to apply for all of those things that a lot of people just don't know is available?
Yeah, that will be up to the sheriff's office to make that referral. But yes, that's certainly how I would envision it working. There's also, I think what we would do is look at the broad array of income qualification or income restricted programs that seniors are eligible for, and most likely accept documentation of any of those.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries as amended. Moving on to Public Works and Member Childress. Thank you, Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on FMP 2525 on the recommendation for the approval of a contract to Altifer Industries to furnish, deliver one Caterpillar compact tractor loader with accessories for facilities management ground for a period of May 28, 2025 through November 30, 2025 for a total contract amount not to exceed $96,760.
Got a motion, Member Childress, second by Member Heather. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on FMP 2625 on the recommendation for the approval of a contract to Allied Valve to test, repair, and recertify safety relief valve for boilers at the power plant for facilities management for a period of May 28, 2025 through May 27, 2028 for a total contract amount not to exceed $70,640.
A motion, Member Childress, second by Member Covert. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on the recommendation for the approval of a contract to United Door and Dock for 4 slide gates for the Woodridge Green Valley Wastewater Management Treatment Plant for Public Works for a period of May 27, 2025 through May 26, 2026 for a total contract not to exceed $53,253.
A motion, Member Childress, second Member Covert. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to move on PWR 425. Recommendation for the approval of an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois and Corrosion Illinois Network for funding engineer inspection services for the water system planning for Public Works for a period of May 27, 2025 through May 26, 2034.
Okay, wow, that sounds like a long time away. We've got a motion by Member Childress, second by Member Heather. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Member Childress. Moving on to technology and Member Covert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on 8E1 TEP 0007-25, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Telecom Innovations Group LLC for the annual maintenance of the county phone system for informational technology for the period of August 7th, 2025 through August 6th, 2026 for a contract total amount of $88,754.50 pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act.
Okay, we got a motion by Member Covert, second by Member Krajewski. Is there any discussion on this item? All those in favor then? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Member Covert. Moving on to transportation and Member Ozog.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for approval of item of DTP 003425. Recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Sutton Ford Incorporated to furnish and deliver 2 Ford F-350 crew cabs for the Division of Transportation for the period May 27, 2025 through May 26, 2026 2026 for a contract total not to exceed $149,272.80, contract pursuant to Governmental Joint Purchasing Act.
A motion by member Ozark, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I move for approval of DTP 003325, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Sutton Ford Incorporated to furnish and deliver one 2025 Ford F-350 crew cab for the Division of Transportation Fleet Department for a contract total not to exceed $79,551.40, contract pursuant to the Governmental Joint Purchasing Act.
I got a motion by member Ozark, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, member Ozark. Moving on
Thank
to
you.
finance resolutions, you get to hear me again in the absence of member Cahill. Her mother's not doing well, so we wish her well. I'd like a motion to approve FIR 008125, acceptance and appropriation of additional funding for the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This is for $5,668. We had a motion by member Heather, second by member, I believe, Krajewski. Is there any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'd like a motion on FIR 008125, acceptance and appropriation for the Animal Services Illinois DCEO Public Health and Safety Grant, Program Year 25, Intergovernmental Agreement. This is for the accounting unit for $275,000. We had a motion by member Rutledge, second by member Honig. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'd like a motion for FIR 009025, acceptance and appropriation of interest earned and investment for the DuPage Animal Friends Phase 2 Capital Project Grant, Company 5,000 in the amount of $2,765. Motion by member Heather, second by member Honig. Any discussion on this item? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I need a motion to combine and approve 10A, B. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't usually do this. Motion to receive and place on file informational wire transfers and the county board resolution. We've got a motion by member Heather, second by member Yu. Oh, I'm sorry, and payment of claims. Payment of claims, wire transfers, and county board resolutions. We've got a member Heather and, I'm sorry, what? Okay, we're gonna start over, but I know who made the motions. Making a motion to receive and place on file payment of claims, wire transfers, county board resolutions, and grant proposal notifications. Thank you all for your corrections. Motion by member Heather, second by member you actually did it first, before I did my mistakes. Any discussion on these items? All those in favor then? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to old business. Or any old business? I see none. Moving on to new business. Is there any new business? Member Krajewski.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I know, I want to thank Member Swarzy for Health and Human Services and bringing forward those not-for-profit grants. Today, I'd like to bring up on a new business, Member Galassi, who's on vacation, had not-for-profit from District 3, Simply from the Heart. And they know they'd submitted all their information. They qualified for the program, but they submitted their federal tax return 990 instead of the state tax return. So I'm going to ask in 2 weeks, Member Glassy, myself, Member Evans, that put that on the agenda through ARPA interest. And then Member Cahill, she texted you and I last night. Unfortunately, she has a family emergency, a surgery for a family member today at the hospital, so she won't be here. But she also was looking to put on the Elmhurst for the Performing Arts, which actually qualifies in all aspects for our program and for us to be able to fund it. My understanding is they submitted a certificate of good standing from 2 years ago instead of this year, even though they are in good standing. They have filed their paperwork last October. She could probably talk more about that one. I know I've talked to most of the board members regarding those two Member Cahill could probably talk more about the District 1 if anybody has questions. I did forward to a few board members the information on the two of them, but can get more information. And again, I think Member Schwarzy is going to bring this up under new business.
I'm going to let Member Schwarzy answer, and then I have a couple of things on this also.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, and I appreciate Member Krajewski bringing this up. We had a handful of chats about this and the best way to proceed. And I just want to share with this board that when after round one of this program, we, specifically me and finance, took a lot of feedback on how to proceed in the future, because it just to take some of the heat and busy work off the plate of finance. So earlier, well, late last year, myself, Vice Chair Garcia, met with finance staff, state's attorney staff, and our senior staff, and talked about all the feedback we got. What types of things can we do to prevent some of the problems that we ran into under round one? And so we did put things in there, like making sure that the information received was 100% accurate and on time and things like that. So finance and the state's attorney's office did everything that we asked them to do 100%. So with that being said, we have also seen, maybe some new issues come up this time around. Not as many, certainly not as many. And we will revisit these before we do round three to hopefully solve some of these problems. But with that being said, I am all for Brian Krajewski's new business, invitation to have these things paid for by ARPA interest.
Thank you, Member Schwarzy. I've had many meetings with you and our staff, and I had a couple of questions for the staff in regards to this. I don't know if Mary Catherine wants to come up. And also I was asking Jeff Martinowicz how much is left in our ARPA interest that hasn't been actually earmarked. So I don't know if we have that number. You've got it? Okay, perfect. So yeah, start with that, I think. That'd be great.
Okay. Let's start with ARPA interest. We rebaselined the ARPA interest numbers at the end of last week. We actually, the whole small agency grant program ended up at about not to exceed $711,000. So we had budgeted like $1 million for that, or over $1 million, $1.05 million for that. So that left about $338,000 that went back into the pot. So right now, including that 338, we're at $950,000, $950 with ARPA interest.
$950,000.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then that's hasn't been earmarked, any of that, correct?
Right. And that reflects, the sheriff meals. We have a number of programs that have been added on, natatorium, safe harbor. Those are all in the budget. So that's in addition to those.
Okay, thank you so much for
950.
that, just so we have an idea of what we're working with.
Yeah.
I'm very much, I talked to Member Krajewski yesterday, and I'm in favor of always helping nonprofits out where they need it. I do want to make sure that it's been very clear that we were very clear on, and our staff was very clear with all their instructions on the small agency grants, that what they needed to apply for and the information they needed to give was what was needed. And so I'll be happy to be in favor of this, but I want to make sure that we're clear that this was nothing that was due to the small agency grant rules or regulations, because there was a resolution, there was the informational webinar, everything. So our staff was very clear with what needed to be done with this. And so I know nonprofits sometimes have a little harder time getting the information that they need to get in. And so we always want to be the benefit of the doubt on that. But we also make sure that our staff gets the right kudos for getting all the information out and following everything. So I just wanted to make sure that that was done. So does anybody else have any questions on these items that Member Krajewski has presented for us to perhaps take out of ARPA interest? Will they be getting more information on a specific? I know I have more information on them. I think you sent something to Member Honig about what was, and I think it was Member Heather got it also. If we can get more information on these, just the whole board could perhaps know exactly what we would be funding. Perfect. I think everybody would like to know exactly what we'd be doing. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to just say that we just want to just do it to anybody without knowing all the things. So I guess. Sure.
Yeah, it's just separate. Do you know how much money is restricted still that we've committed for ARPA interest, but we just still haven't sent it out for whatever various reasons, how much money we have in the bank that's still earning interest? And we could get it later. And is there a projection, like we have something we're gonna fund 6 months from now, that's to be done by 26, we potentially is gonna earn another 100,000, 200, 300?
Let me follow up with
Yeah,
you
go.
on that directly. We asked the treasurer, we redid the cash flow for ARPA at the very end of, we changed the cash flow a little bit. We sped things up at the end of 2024. That was when we were doing all the work to close out the grant. And because we sped things up, our original forecast, we haven't redone the forecast since then. That's only been a couple months ago. So we put in a request to them. We should have a little bit better. Right now, just a reminder to you, we're at $10.5 million. That's what the forecast is. We think that number is actually going to come down a little bit instead of going up.
Another 10.5 we're gonna earn in interest?
No, 10.5 is what the current forecast is for the interest earnings. And we think that's going to come down when we update the forecast. So we think if anything, my number of 950, that's, that number is going to come, that's probably going to come down a little bit. But that's based on the current forecast with the treasurer's office. We put that request in, a week or so ago. So they run that with their financial advisors. PFM runs the numbers for that. So we're waiting to get back. But I can tell you, let me give you a rough number of, where we are right now in terms of what has totally spent is about $3 million. So of what we've budgeted, which is let's call it 9.5, let's round, we've spent about 3. So there's still a fair amount to go of the spending, expenditure
My
side.
question is, how much money of ARPA money that we haven't sent out that's earning interest? Nick, I think, wants to say something there.
But I can, I can
You
give
can
you
get
that
that to
number.
us later. I was just curious if we project it out. We haven't paid all this money out, so we're earning a lot of interest on it, I assume. And there's gonna be more interest earned on it.
So the one thing I wanted to clarify, so ARPA, you're correct in the date you gave before 2026, it all has to be spent by. ARPA interest is not in that category. That can stay in our account as long.
But
as
since we haven't
we're
spent that,
still
we're still earning.
We're still earning interest on the unspent ARPA, and we're earning interest on the interest
I
of
understand that.
ARPA.
Well, that's my question is, do we have a projection of how much we haven't spent? We're gonna be spending it over time, how much more interest we're gonna wind up collecting at current interest rates over the life of payments?
Well, just on the construction projects that are to go, that's 21 million. About 21 million to go, and
But not of interest.
right.
I'm
That's
asking the interest, have we done a projection on the interest?
our numbers are all included.
So
the ARPA
21
interest
million more we're gonna get.
No.
No.
That's what I'm asking.
So there's 21 million in ARPA that has not been spent. That is among three different projects, care center,
I understand.
health
I'm just wondering,
department.
have we done a projection? If
So that's what they're working with the treasurer. Of that 21 million, obviously, we're gonna be burning through that fairly quickly here. And that is what the projection that of the 950, you're not gonna be too much more or less than that. But you are around 950 in unallocated ARPA interest. That could change depending on what the CD rates are, come down.
All you're saying is we don't have that in the bank right now. The 950 is the projection. of
That
what
is
we're gonna
correct.
have.
That is
Okay.
incorporated in 950.
That's what I want. Oh, thank you.
And my question for both of you before you leave is I know that we haven't heard anything, but is there any chance of a clawback on ARPA funding at all? That's my concern. If we have the ARPA interest, that might be something we have to use on the ARPA funding.
My worst nightmare is I mean, we have had a lot of discussions on the clawback. And we are absolutely engaged with our national leaders. The chair is engaged with the national leaders. We are tracking that. Could there be something? Absolutely. Have we seen something? Not yet. And so we do have contingencies that are out there.
Right.
But we are right now, the construction projects are going full steam. I mean, the CRC is going to be done here in the next month or two. So every project is moving forward. That is always a possibility, but
And you bring it to us as you hear something because we're gonna make some really
we are
quick
actually-
decisions.
I mean,
Okay.
even rumors, we talk all the time, but I will tell you from how ARPA was administered at DuPage County, if you think about it, ARPA was given to many government agencies across the country.
Mhm.
And I can tell you in our discussions with many of them, we are definitely a step above
Right.
with Jeff and Mary Catherine and their team.
I agree.
And so, but there's nothing to be said that something can't change at the Washington level that says clawing it back.
That's why I'm a little concerned
but
about
you heard-
using all the ARPA interest because
So our total, the ARPA interest is.
I know, but I'm just like, that might need to have.
But
a
what you need to know
need.
is the allocated unspent ARPA funds, we said is 21 million, is 21 million. And we are probably in the neighborhood of, how much a month are we burning through right now with construction? Probably, I was gonna say 1.5 million probably is our burn rate.
I wanted to add one thing, mostly for the benefit of the new members. The reason why we think the ARPA funds are at such low risk for clawback is we got all the ARPA money at the beginning. They gave us all the cash and we've been spending it down. That's really unlike the way we do most of our federal grant spending. So when we're talking to folks at the national level, they're like, hey, if you've gotten the money and you've obligated the money and you've spent most of the money, you're at very little risk. So there are folks that haven't spent and
Right.
haven't obligated. We're getting notices constantly about that money being clawed back, but that's not our situation. So,
Right, because there's some other
yeah.
counties, I think, that didn't do anything until like this
Yeah,
year,
they-
or they're starting to like rush. Right.
You know, I think we're pretty safe.
Thank you, staff. That's all I'm gonna say. So big things to you guys. Any other questions on this item? Member Kajewski.
I don't think they're gonna do any clawback, because I think right now the feds are actually going after some of the cities, counties, states that actually spent this money on things that were clearly not even remotely related to what they were supposed to be using the funds on. So they're going after those real egregious ones. By the time they even get after those, this stuff's gonna be done.
There's from what we've seen out there, there's a lot more low hanging fruit. Like you said, programs that didn't qualify. We were very careful. Or more importantly, there's people as the chair mentioned, that they have not allocated the money prior to the deadline when it needed to be allocated, and they're trying to allocate now. That's a major problem. We have met every single requirement of the ARPA funding throughout this entire process. And you're right, there's a lot the other government entities have maybe not done that. And so they're more at risk than what we are.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, staff. Thank you for getting us all organized and so we can not worry as much about this maybe. Any other discussion on this? I guess we need hands who are in consensus of this item. Please raise your hand. And more information will be sent out in regards to this. Okay, it looks like we have a pretty much consensus on this. So thank you, Member Kajewski, for bringing this up. Under old business or under new business, which really is kind of old business, two things I wanted to mention. One was, I think, our surpluses. I think it's June we have to revisit some of those items that we put forth. So will that be coming in the next few weeks? Are you talking about the ones we put some of the items till June to revisit to make sure that we were still going to do some of those items? It's coming back to you now.
Oh, yeah. So if you remember the 2024 surplus that we discussed at the end of the year, there was some hesitation about moving forward about the state of, whether those surpluses would stay. And so what the board decided at that point, I know the chair weighed in, the board decided to go ahead and reserve it for those projects, but don't start the projects until we saw. And those were a lot of the construction projects here on campus that we basically reserved it for it, and we've held off. So we can definitely revisit that. I'll meet with Director Harbaugh and Facilities Management, and then we can come forward in June and discuss that.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. I just had that on my mind that was coming up, the deadline on that one. Also, I just wanted to thank all of our board members who are either on Illinois Department of Housing or on the DuPage County Housing. I think we've got Member Desart and Member Evans, I believe, on the board. And of course, Sam Tornatore, who is doing the Illinois Department of Housing. As we heard this morning, housing is a huge issue in DuPage County. And I think it's something we all need to be concerned about. And I thank you for the hard work that you're doing beside the work here on the county board. So thank you. Any other discussion on anything? No? Move to adjourn, Eckhoff says. Second by everybody, I think.